Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Early Bar Football Podcast. I'm back. I had two episodes away, and Tang wonderfully, masterfully held not this seat. Unfortunately, that would be rather difficult. And to be honest, like this chair, I'm already going off on the tangent, but this chair is very close to breaking. Like this, it shouldn't rock back, and it does. This is in locked position. So
that's a visibly rocking chair there.
Well, basically, it's in locked position, and I think if you lean back in rock position, there's a bit of give, but I think that the give is getting bigger. And I sort of flipped it over the other day, and I saw like there was a little crack there. And my sort of big concern is that I'm going to be doing a stream at some point, and it's just going to go because that's what happened to my other chair. So it's a bit concerning.
Staples.
No, this one came from Amazon. There are other retailers out there, but this one came from Amazon. I just don't think I put it together properly. But I like rocking on chairs quite a lot. So let's just get a rocking chair, right? I mean, this is a big tangent already. I'm with Tang, Barnes, and Chrissy today. It's the awesome foursome, as they would say. That's just top of the head. Not bad.
Fantastic.
We'll talk about Fantastic Four. Even better. Yeah, much better than Awesome Foursome, to be honest. Okay. Cristiano Ronaldo, that's what we're going to start off with because you have to. It's what everyone's talking about right now. At the time of recording, it's Friday, and in less than 24 hours, Cristiano Ronaldo possibly is going to make his second Manchester United debut. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had a press conference today, and he confirmed that Ronaldo will feature, but didn't say whether or not he was going to start. Actually, he said, I haven't quoted Ollie properly there. I apologize, Mr. Solskjaer. He said that he will be on the pitch at some point, which in my mind said he's going to come on, he's going to hold the shirt up and then be like, right, I'm on the bench for the rest of the game. Like, that's going to happen. I don't know about that. Tang, what do you think? Do you think he's going to start?
I don't think he will. And first of all, Owen, it's great to have you back, can we just say?
Wow, you can't have those kind of tangents. That's what I bring to the table. Just the worst host.
No, I don't think he'll start. I think he will come on as a super sub, and I think the script is written for him. Although saying that, I think Newcastle have a huge opportunity tomorrow to just completely ruin everything, and Newcastle get a lot of stick. Ash Barnes has given Newcastle a lot of stick on this podcast before.
And about to give more, but carry on.
And Newcastle could upset everyone, although I don't think they will.
Oh,
you
got Anton Deck. It might be. It's not you. Newcastle, you might win, but it's not you. It's interesting you say he won't play. Barnes, do you think he should play though? Is there any excuse for him not to play? Considering, I mean, he's had a full preseason at Juventus. He played for his international side, scored 2 goals. Been a long week. Scored 2 goals. And he's had a full week of training with Manchester United. Should he start tomorrow?
I don't think they need him really, particularly against Newcastle. But I think Steve Bruce will genuinely be quaking his boots seeing Ronaldo warming up. But I don't really think Manchester United will need Ronaldo in this game. I just haven't really, like Tang said, the script just feels written for United to just go and absolutely smash Newcastle at the weekend. I have absolutely no faith in them whatsoever. Ronaldo or no Ronaldo, in all honesty. They've just been... I think Manchester United, the signing Ronaldo, are really on like riding a positive wave at the minute, whereas I think it's fair to say Newcastle are riding the most negative wave possible.
Also known as the Newcastle wave.
The Newcastle wave.
Yeah.
So I think, Ronaldo's going to have if he plays, I would have thought he might score. But I don't think they'll need him, but we'll see.
So to confirm, do you think he's going to start or not?
No, I don't think he's going to start.
Not enjoying this negativity so far, guys. Chrissy, why is Ronaldo going to start tomorrow?
I think he will start tomorrow. I genuinely think he will start tomorrow. I think he'll start tomorrow because it's Ronaldo. You saw the positive impact. Just even having Rafa Varane walk onto the pitch and obviously unveil his shirt had for the Leeds game. If Man United fans see it 2:00, Ronaldo's on that team sheet. Old Trafford's going to be absolutely fired up tomorrow. And not in that, I generally think, like, if you look at the team selection, what Solskjaer could go for tomorrow, obviously I know later on in the podcast we're going to talk about the whole debacle with the Brazilian thing, and obviously the Brazil player's not playing, which, by the way, when Leif found out Fred weren't playing, he probably done the Ryan Giggs celebration that he did against Arsenal back in 1999, shirt off, swinging it round his room and that.
With an equal amount of hair on the chest as well, not far off.
Yeah. But I generally think that it could be the opportunity for Solskjaer to maybe play a bit more of an attacking 4-2-3-1, maybe play, drop Pogba back into the 2 alongside someone like a Matic, then maybe go Sancho, Fernandes, Greenwood all in behind Ronaldo. And I think there's generally the opportunity to do that against a team like Newcastle, which, let's face it, all right, they have got a bit of positive news that Almiron is allowed to play tomorrow, but with Newcastle, we know what Steve Bruce is going to do. It's going to be literally everyone behind the ball. Callum Wilson, do your best to hold the ball up, please. Thank you very much. And try and bring St. Maximin and Almiron into the game. But I generally think Ronaldo should start for Man United tomorrow.
I think so. He should as well. I don't see any reason for him not to start. I can understand. It's kind of weird for me. So I'll say there, I can't see a reason for him not to start. I can see the rationale why he wouldn't. You can already see the interview of like, well, it takes time, bed him in, a couple of weeks of training, learn patterns of play. Forgive my language, but that is bullshit. If that is the rationale, because it's nearly 9. I'll say it again, it's bullshit.
It's not 9 if you listen. People watch you at different times.
If that is the case, sort of response to censorship there. Wow. It is though. The reason that I say that is because I understood it for Jadon Sancho. I understood it for Rafael Varane because legitimately they did not have a pre-season. And, in the case of Sancho, he was with the England squad. He had a delay coming back, etc., etc. Fine. Rafael Varane, of course, he didn't have a pre-season with Madrid. Then he had to quarantine for, at the time, I think it was 10 days, something like that. It was a bit longer and it took him a while. And let's face it, there was no rush to get him into the side. With Ronaldo, it's different. He did have a full pre-season at Juventus. He has played in the international break a big game, and he scored 2 goals and he broke records. And he has had a full training with Manchester United. And at the end of the day, it's Cristiano Ronaldo. When is he never not in good shape? It's hardly as if he showed up to Manchester United training and go, Ronaldo's 3 stone overweight, guys. I couldn't believe this. He hasn't got his legs in him at the moment. So I think for several reasons he will have to start. One, because I think, and this is real, I think there might be some pressure just in terms of like, sort of commercial side of things or the marketing side of things being like, you do realize that if Ronaldo starts on the bench, people are going to go crazy on social media. People get angry that they don't play Donny van de Beek, let alone Cristiano Ronaldo. And 2, whilst a lot of people will be at that game tomorrow because they have season tickets, so they were going to go anyway, there are other people that have spent a significant amount of money. I know personally a couple of people that have spent a significant amount of money to go tomorrow with the idea that Ronaldo is going to play like a significant part. If he comes on for 5 minutes, people are going to be pissed. Like really, really upset about that. And look, it's Newcastle, and if you can't play a full game, 60 minutes, let him play 60 minutes. You'd fancy him to get a goal. At the end of the day, it is Newcastle, and then take him off. But I don't know. I guess morbid curiosity in me that's a little bit like, what if he doesn't play him? what happens if we see that reaction on social media? But I think he'll play. And despite this like feeling, sometimes when it comes to Manchester United, you never know what you're going to get ever, especially against teams like Newcastle, because in previous years, it would be completely conceivable that Man United could dominate the game and Newcastle would 1-0. Like that would be a real possibility. But I just, like you guys, I just don't see anything else but like a proper drubbing. I think it might be a message, just not even if we play well, just I think the atmosphere will be too strong. It'll be a really good atmosphere there tomorrow. So fingers crossed. Speaking of Ronaldo as well, because I'm not sure if I've been on with you guys talking about this when it comes to Ronaldo. Tang, how many goals this season do you think Ronaldo's going to get?
I think he'll get 20. Like 22, if you want to be really specific, 22.
Yeah. Okay.
I think he'll get 22. I think, and you haven't been on the podcast since he signed, but I think it's a really good signing. I think that he will get goals, and I definitely agree with you in terms of why wouldn't you start him? You know, he's Ronaldo. He's an absolute like sort of machine, isn't he? He's not going to be unfit or anything like that. But no, I think 22 goals, and I think he'll probably get you a FA Cup at least. There's a cup. There's definitely a cup in there, a domestic cup for United this season.
I think so. There was pictures of him. There's been pictures of him released all week, by the way. Like Man United media team is in over. Honestly, they're in overdrive. Like even the video that was released yesterday, there was pictures of him out today. There was one of him in like the museum, and he was pointing at like there's like a Moscow 2008 exhibit in there, and he was pointing at it, being like, oh, and it was kind of a case of, well, she did score, did miss a pen, so let's just don't bring that up. Do you think he can spur United on to challenge this season, Barnes?
It's a good question. I think that's what he's been brought in for, right? You sign Ronaldo, you expect to challenge, and I'm not sure. I think Ollie might have said this, that now he's got like a great squad. He might have said himself that he's got a squad that he feels can challenge, which puts himself under quite a lot of pressure, I think, because if you're saying that, then you need to go and perform. But it's interesting. Just going back to the question you asked, Tang, on how many goals do you think Ronaldo scored? Depends if he's going to take penalties or not. I can tell you he's not going to score.
I'm not having this. I've seen this. I've seen this on social media. I apologize to cut you off, but I've seen these people get really angry about this, going like when we're scoring this whole like he's got this record right in this week, and people go, yeah, but what would he have without penalties? I just hate that argument because penalties are part of football. What is this weird?
It's a consideration.
What is this weird thing about like people put it all the time on social media of like, oh, so and so, but what if they took penalties? Like Bruno Fernandes. Oh yeah, but he took penalties. Yeah, okay. Penalties part of the game. Like what are we excluding things now? Okay, you can only score goals from open play with your head. Like, okay, that's what we're going for now. I don't get that. That's part of the game, right? Apologies.
I'd say you could get. Yeah, but if you're predicting how many goals he's going to score, I'd say he's going to score 23 goals. But if you take penalties out of that, then possibly 18. I don't know if he is going to take the penalties. Maybe it's Bruno.
He might take penalties. He might take penalties.
As I said, I do not think he will score one free kick. There you go. That's my Ronaldo scoring prediction for the season.
I think that's fair. His free kick days.
He is rubbish at them.
Yeah, his free kick. I think one of the last ones he scored, I think was it the World Cup?
Against
the one he scored Spain, and even that was like not his usual technique, was it? He actually just took a free kick like a normal person. So I agree with you. I wouldn't want him on free kicks, but look, if he wants to take penalties, okay, all right. A good record, even though he missed one in that Champions League final. Again, I just
feel like I've hurt you with that, Owen.
No. I was thinking that the other day when I saw it, because I saw people that you get the whole like Ronaldo, Fernandes, Penate, Manchester United, because it's just like was it Trevor Sinclair who is just on my list at the moment? Honestly, of like. There was that screenshot, wasn't there, of been like when he was linked to City, and it was like he's just what City needs. He's just what City needs. He might cost a pretty penny, but he's exactly what they need. He'll get him just over the line, win a Champions League. What's that? He signed for Manchester United. He's finished. He's got no legs. Okay, he's not going to play every game, and it's like, what's the difference there? Oh, I remember. It's just it's bizarre. Just don't get me started on Talk Sport, to be honest. Just. We'll move on. Chrissy, how many goals are you going to score? I put myself in a bad mood.
Well, I'll just say over the 2 games against Arsenal, we probably get at least 4 goals against them. I think I did mention. I think I said 10 when he first signed for Man United, but I'd be a bit realistic and probably get about 4. He will still score against Arsenal. He does score against Arsenal. When he doesn't? Yeah, exactly. I mean, if Sergi Canos can do it, Ronaldo can't he? So, but
exactly.
In terms of how many goals Ronaldo will score, I'm going to go with 25. I'm going to push the boat out a bit, and I'm going to say 25.
I think it will be up there. I don't know if he'll hit the same numbers that he did in Serie A, in fairness, but when it comes to like the Ronaldo slander, I'm not just because obviously I'm a United fan, but I'm just not having it because. There's people that like are trying to say that he's finished or he doesn't bring something to Manchester United. Like it's just a case. I think they're just ignoring real hard evidence there. Like last season, He was the top goal scorer in the league. And if that was any other player, you'd be saying, oh, that's not bad. Or, if that was going to any other team, it feels like you'd be going, that's not bad. And I know that when you go, Chelsea signed Romelu Lukaku for 90 something million. Well, of course they would, because Ronaldo is like 11 years older than him. So that's what that is. But at the end of the day, he still did score that many goals last year. And then this sort of weird thing that people follow that up with, they'll go, yeah, but Juventus barely scraped to the top 4. And it's like, yeah, they did. And it was because of his goals. Yeah. He was carrying a team at 36 years old. It's unbelievable, right? And I don't know. I just find the weird desperation to write him off a bit odd. But I suppose they did it with the likes of like Zlatan as well. And those kind of players, not just Man United players, but those kind of players tend just to keep writing people wrong, don't they? So I have no doubts he'll be a success at United. What that success is, I don't know, to be honest. I don't. Like we mentioned about challenging. I think United don't have an excuse not to challenge this year. As far as winning the title, I still think that's probably a bit of a stretch. But you would hope that they would be closer, certainly. Like you said, Barnes, about Ollie, there isn't many excuses left. There isn't any, to be honest with you, not to challenge. I'm not to say if he doesn't win the league, he'll get sacked. I don't think he will. But if they're really off it, then he'll be in a bit of trouble, I think. But since we're talking about the Premier League, we'll talk about some other Premier League games. Of course, a big Premier League weekend, as it always is, some really interesting games. One I do want to talk about, which when I say it out loud, you'd be like, who cares about that game? Because it's 3:00. But because it genuinely could cause the first managerial casualty of the season. And that is Arsenal versus Norwich City. Now, honestly, Tang, what is your prediction for this one? I don't think it's that easy.
I think it's going to finish 1-1. I think Arsenal score relatively early on, and I just don't think they'll be able to see the game out. And I think they'll let Norwich back into the game, as Arsenal sort of usually do. They've not been great at game management and seeing out games, and all that sort of stuff. I think they'll draw, and I then think real question marks over Arteta there, because opening few games of the season, no wins. You've lost to Brentford on the opening day. You then potentially haven't beaten Norwich. That's 2 promoted sides that you haven't beaten.
That is relegation form.
Exactly. It's a huge a relegation 6-pointer for Arsenal, and also in September. It's crazy. And I think if Arteta doesn't win that, well, even if he wins that, still massive pressure. So he's in a lose-lose, isn't it? So
I mean, he has to win just his next few games, to be honest with you, because the fixtures, look, they did have a difficult start to the season. You would have hoped they would have beaten Brentford if you were an Arsenal fan. They didn't. Put themselves in a really bad position. I think it's interesting you said that you think Arsenal will score first and then let them back in, because I would think myself, and I'll go to you, Barnes, in a second, but I would think myself, if Arsenal score early on, Norwich have the resistance of a chocolate teapot to boiling water. They'll just completely just disintegrate after one goal. I would almost see it the other way around of there's pressure on Arsenal 5 minutes in, Norwich score, then 85 minutes, Arsenal get the equaliser, but at the end of the day, it's kind of it's still 1-1. Barnes, if he doesn't win, well, it's an interesting one. If he loses, I mean, he's in a lot of trouble. If he draws, do you see that he could get sacked? I mean, do you see he could get sacked either way?
I think so, personally. I think a loss, I think he's got to go. On Arteta in general, I'm surprised that he wasn't sacked at the end of last season. So it feels kind of weird for me to then say, he should be sacked after losing this one game, because I think he should have been sacked a long time ago. Because, as I've mentioned before, with these sort of rookie managers, we don't know. There's nothing to go back on. He can't say, well, look, I did this. I mean, yeah, he won the FA Cup, but that's not really got anything to do with league football, has it? He's not. We don't know what to expect from Arteta, because he's got nothing. He hasn't done anything really. So it's a very difficult one. I think he's going to be. I think they will win, though. Having said that, I think the negativity I've mentioned before that just surrounds Arsenal as a football club at the minute is sort of making people think, they're going to lose. They're going to find it really tough. But to be honest, Arsenal's home record, maybe not last season, but COVID season in general, has been quite good at the Emirates, and Norwich are quite bad. So logically, Arsenal have a much better team than Norwich. Leave everything else. Leave the Arteta situation. the fans are going to be a tense atmosphere, especially for the first 10, 20 minutes. They don't start well. But let's just look at the 11s. Arsenal have a much better team, should really win this game. But as I said, if they don't, and even if they draw, I think Arteta's already lost. I think, they said Conte, I can't see it happening, but if a manager like that's available, they should be trying to get him now and get him in. That's what I think.
There does seem to be, I think you're right, a feeling of, well, if it's not tomorrow, then it's 6 months' time or something like that when it comes to Arteta. Because, I mean, Chrissy, as a semi-regular Arsenal fan, when it comes to Arteta, what do you see a style of play from him at all? Do you see any kind of direction from him? I mean, what's your thoughts on the game tomorrow as well?
In terms of Arteta's style of play, I can't see what style of play it is other than give the ball away at the back and concede, because that's all Arsenal pretty much do, because obviously that's the thing. It's quite strange because obviously with the 5 at the back system when he first came in, Arsenal actually did look, because that was a big problem with Emery, was that defensively Arsenal were all over the place, and when Arteta came in, he did shore up the defence and like, it's quite weird to say this, but Arsenal did have like the 3rd best defence last season. It was just going forward, they literally had nothing. But I feel as if like the players don't take on his instructions, and I think maybe he does overcomplicate things a bit. And I think obviously with what showed with Emery, like I think you got to give these players simple instructions, because otherwise they overcomplicate it. I have put them down as a 3-1 win, because obviously it is one of the fixtures on the Super 6 in that. So I have put them down as a 3-1 win, but they just got to take the game to Norwich from the first whistle. Get your Sakas, if Smith Rowe might be out tomorrow, because I think he has got a bit of an illness, but if he does play, get Saka, get Smith Rowe, get Aubameyang, Lacazette, get whoever's playing, the attacking players, get them on the ball, get them flowing, get at Norwich from the first minute, and make a marker, make a statement. Because again, like with Arteta's style, it feels a bit laboured at times. It feels as if they're just passing the ball and just not going anywhere with it. If you're doing that at home against Norwich, the fans are going to get on your back saying, we want to attack, and that will leave. And that's the thing. All right, Norwich don't have the best starts, but Norwich have been in a similar situation to Arsenal, that they've been hit with injuries, they've been hit with COVID cases, and some of their players are going to return tomorrow, and it'd be a big statement if Norwich do go to the Emirates and beat them. And if that does happen, and even if Arsenal draw, then I think if Arsenal lose, Arteta goes. I think if they draw, he's on number, he's on borrowed time, as they say, because. What is it? It's not the game after Norwich, but it's the game after that. That's the North London derby, and the Arsenal fans do not want to lose to Spurs.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it kind of feels like sometimes with managers, when that they're going to be on their way out, irrespective of they might win a couple of games. It was like that. I remember thinking that with Louis van Gaal at Man United. Like, even though he was going to win the FA Cup or whatever, there was just this general feeling of. Every time we won a game, it felt like that's massively papered over the cracks. And those cracks are still there. And it feels like that with Arsenal. If they win tomorrow 3-0, everyone will be happy. And they'll be like, okay, right, move on to the next one. But they still got massive problems. And they have Burnley the next week. They might beat Burnley, and it's a case of, oh, look, Arsenal back. But then, like you say, they have the North London derby. They lose 3-0. And it's kind of like, well, those problems that you had 3 weeks ago are still exactly the same. And you just don't really see, when it comes to Arsenal, like the idea of them, getting anywhere near the top 4 just seems so remote, doesn't it? So remote. And that's not just because of the bad start. That's prior to the season. Just seems so remote that, you talk about standards dropping even with like United and stuff like that. It just seems so remote that the Europa League is a success for them this season. Yeah. Not winning because they're not in it. Qualifying, like 6th would be like massive success. Massive success for them this season, and they spent a lot of money, and they got a big fan base.
Yeah, I think Joe Cole said it perfectly when his comments after the Man City game, when he said Arsenal aren't just years away from a team like Man City, they're decades away. And he's right, because obviously under the Wenger era, don't get me wrong, obviously it was great that Wenger got Arsenal into the top 4 for as many seasons as he did, but you didn't have your Man Cities, your Leicesters, even your Tottenhams they didn't have that sort of infrastructure that they have now. That those teams can push for the top four. And it's kind of like Arsenal have just they've just flatlined and just going for the same approach. Like, it doesn't matter. We'll still try and get in the top four because we're a big club. Pretty much, we're still going to get in the top four because we're a big club. But that's not how it works. You got to expand. You got to grow, not just as a team, but as a club as a whole.
Exactly, and they've had. It's not the case as well with Arsenal. It's like you said, one of them being decades away from Man City. It's almost like like a decade of just mismanagement in the case of. It's not as if they haven't had good players the last 10 years, because they've had really good players. But every time that player got to that level of being like, I want to start winning stuff or I want to start competing, they realized that wasn't going to happen at Arsenal when they leave. If they managed to keep all of those players throughout the years, maybe they would have got a bit closer. Or this is still an Arsenal side that, they finished second a couple of years, didn't they? Even though it wasn't really second, but they did, and it's just a case of, it feels like, I don't know, for after years and years of just being content with getting top four or whatever. And like you said, everyone's caught up with them. And it feels like overnight, suddenly they find themselves in this just really precarious position, because I don't think they would get Conte, because I don't think why would Conte go anywhere near Arsenal? He wouldn't. I mean, he could be a case of they pay him loads of money, but I think even he would look at that being like, there's only so much I can do, because I just don't know if you do that. I think the best hope that they would have is finding an up-and-coming coach in the Premier League that suddenly is able to adapt to a big club. Some of those younger players do develop into something, and then they can make something out of that. But you're talking at that point about like kind of just hope. Yeah. Just hope that maybe something can happen. Another big match this weekend is Leicester City at home to Manchester City. That's also a 3:00. There are some big 3:00 tomorrow. A real big 3:00. You've got United Newcastle's 3:00. Obviously, that Arsenal Norwich game is just a big game. It wouldn't usually be, but because of the circumstances, it's a big game. You've got Leicester City, Man City as well, which is a 3:00. Historically, Tang, Leicester actually have quite a decent record against City, and considering it's an away game for Manchester City, do Leicester have a chance?
Yeah, they absolutely do. Leicester, they're run the right way, and they've really built on, especially obviously with their Premier League win a few years ago. I'm surprised. I think a lot of people are that they've sort of stayed up there, but I think Leicester can definitely cause some problems. I think. We talk about how you just said how Arsenal were content to be in the top four. I think they were lucky to be in the top four. I think Wenger did absolute. I think it partly did miracles with some of the Arsenal squads over the years just to get top four.
Yeah. Some of those players.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk any rubbish about Sebastian Squillaci, but
or Andre Santos.
Exactly, and I just feel like that as they've plateaued and gone down, some teams like Leicester have just come up and they've run the right way. They've had to sell players like Kante and Mahrez, but they've recruited well. You've obviously got Ndidi, and now they've got people like Maddison and that, and Harvey Barnes, of course. I think Leicester they'll challenge City. It's always a good game, as you said, between those two, and I think Leicester play a really good way. I mean, you've got how old's Vardy now? Like he's
what, 32, 31, 32,
like,
something like that.
He's older than that, to be fair.
Might be older than that, 33.
Or maybe, but like, you've got him leading the line for Leicester and doing a good job. And, man for man, I'm going to compare Arsenal again. Man for man, I don't think Leicester have, like, the Arsenal and Leicester squads are relatively similar. I think if you go position by position,
I'd say Leicester's better.
Well, I think there are certainly players in the Arsenal squad that they would start every day for Leicester. The issue is that the Leicester squad is far more balanced. The gulf in class between Leicester players, like you have Arsenal players that are up here and Arsenal players that are just right down on the floor.
Yeah.
Leicester, you have players that are here, but the rest of them are like there. So there is a good distribution of quality.
Absolutely, and that's my point of Leicester. They've run the right way. They've invested in correct positions that they needed to, and things like that. So at the end of the day, I think Leicester could obviously Leify put in his top four prediction. Leicester will be top four. People might think that's crazy, but I can definitely see where he's coming from with that.
Absolutely. I mean, Leicester, the thing is with them, and it might be the thing that does impact their sort of next phase of development, is that they're the club that has spent the most time in those top four positions over the last 2 years, and each season they haven't finished in the top four. Now, realistically, they should have finished in the top four those 2 years, and if they had, they'd be looking and working with a much bigger pot of money right now, a much bigger stature. We know their recruitment's good anyway, so they could be even better at this point. You speak about how good their recruitment is. Arguably, their best bit of recruitment has been their manager, because after the whole Ranieri season, it didn't work out with Ranieri. Then what did they get in? Shakespeare didn't work out with him. Brought in, what was the guy from Southampton? Claude Puel. Again, didn't really work out with him. But Brendan Rodgers, the manager that Arsenal all really want, and again, why would he go there? He wouldn't. They're, like you said, very well run. What's your prediction for tomorrow, Barnes? Do you think Leicester can defeat City once again? And what would that mean for City?
If they shoot a lot, because apparently rumour has it that Scott Carson may be starting goal for Manchester City because their reserve keeper has COVID, and I know we're going to talk about this later on, but Ederson is not allowed to play. So I think that could be quite an interesting one. Although last time he did play for City, I'm pretty sure he kept a clean sheet, so no diss on Scott Carson. When it comes to Leicester, though, I think, especially at centre half, I don't know if any of you have been sort of noticed that Kaglar-Sionchu has been absolutely horrendous these last few weeks. And an absolutely awful game against West Ham. And then international break, I don't know if any of you watched the Netherlands-Turkey game, probably not. He was so bad. I know it's just a couple of games, but, he's not in form. Evans is another year older. I know he's a really good player. I'm not nothing against him. But, I think it's difficult for Leicester to maintain, keep doing well, keep on going. They tend to struggle towards the end of the season as well because they have relatively small squads. And I know they're always pushing the boundaries in terms of what they can achieve. But I think this season they may not improve necessarily on where they've been in the past few years. I don't think they'll be quite as good. And in this game in general, to be honest, I don't see that many reasons why Manchester City won't win. As we mentioned, they've already had one loss. Already this season. I'd be surprised if they drop points again so early in the season. But as you say, Leicester do have a quite good record against Manchester City. It's definitely a good game. Surprised it's a 3:00, especially when Everton Burnley is the Monday Night Football.
Yeah, it's weird,
exciting fixture.
Really weird. I mean, you've got you've got that. They're big 3:00 games. You've got the evening game is Chelsea versus Villa, and I guess Chelsea on the TV. That makes sense. Leeds versus Liverpool's on Sunday, and you go, that's a good game. But that's the only game on the Sunday, which seems a bit weird. Like, what's the game before? There's no other game on Super Sunday. And then the Monday Night Football, like you said, is Everton versus Burnley. And people will probably just be tuning into that to watch highlights of the Ronaldo appearance and analysts on Sky. So I don't really, I agree with you. Very strange. Chrissy, what do you think? Leicester versus Man City. What's your prediction?
I think I've gone for a Manchester City win. I think I've put 2-1, but I think it's going to be quite a tight game. I think it's going to be an exciting game. I think it is going to be quite a tight game. I just think Man City will just have enough quality. All right, they might not. Obviously, they won't have Ederson, and obviously they'll be without Jesus, who's actually done quite well playing right wing. But like we said when they signed Grealish, like it's literally like they've already got pieces of the puzzle that they can just put in and play. Like, what is it? They can even like rotate. So they can even like stick Bernardo Silva out there and bring in, because I think like they're saying that obviously Foden's like back in training. I think Mahrez like coming back into like full fitness as well. So like I think, I think they'll win. I think it will be a close game between the two, but even if Leicester do lose this one, I can still, obviously I did say Liverpool finish fourth, but I can see Leicester pushing Liverpool like quite closely to that fourth place spot.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting game tomorrow. And look, like we said, there's a lot of big games at 3:00, way more than I thought there was. And it feels like all the other games that are televised maybe don't live up to some of the games at 3:00. Like you would think just for the drama, they'd have maybe Arsenal on the TV, or certainly the United one, or even Leicester Man City. I guess with the United one and the Arsenal one, they weren't to know, but they can move those things around. But I don't know, it just feels very, very strange. But I guess that's the the weird sort of rule when it comes to televised football in England. The whole 3 o'clock blackout thing is just bizarre. We'll talk about England briefly because, of course, England played in the week. They drew 1-1 with Poland. Tang, did you watch the game?
I watched the last 20 minutes, Owen.
Good for you.
I was making dinner, and then I was flicking through the channels, as you do, and saw that there was an England game on. So I watched that.
And what did you think?
Yeah, it's just an average. It was just an average, another average England performance, I thought. Kane's goal was good.
Was it though? I have some feelings on that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'd rather talk about Jakub Moder for Poland and how he turned Kyle Walker inside out. And he's Brighton's greatest player, I feel. Probably the greatest Polish player in the Premier League.
I thought you were going to say ever or something like
Probably
that.
Probably ever as well. I didn't want to stretch it too far.
No, well, good for you. I will say with the Kane goal is I do think the keeper should do better.
Yeah.
It's because Wojciech Szczesny, he should just do better in general. But I think that's the best he can do. But no, the ball moves. Don't get me wrong, the ball moves, and I would give him that one. And it does kind of like go over the defender's head and then dip down. So it's a tough one. But if you watch it back, it doesn't end up in the corner, and it swerves, and it still doesn't end up in the corner. 2, if you watch him, he doesn't dive in a sense of he falls over to the side. Like if someone has a shot, you jump. So it was to his left. You would jump to the left to dive. He doesn't. He kind of just sort of it doesn't actually stretch any further out. And it's like a pet peeve of mine. It's like if you dove into the corner, hit your corners, you'd have had a good chance of saving that, but you didn't. You just sort of fell over. And I've made the same thing myself sometimes, where a goal's gone in, and I'm like, if I just like dived or jumped, I would have got that. Like a ball's gone over my head before, and I thought if I just jumped instead of just stretching, I would have got it. But look, Kane's not that far off breaking the record for England, so it's pretty impressive. Barnes, did you watch the game?
I did.
What did you
think?
Be
a lone international football fan, so I'm gonna back. And I did watch it, and it was actually quite a good game. It was quite competitive. I think compared to some of these qualifiers we've seen in England, sometimes they're just quite boring games. Sometimes, especially the qualifiers. But decent performance. There was a lot of social media uproar that Southgate made no substitutes, which is an interesting one. I'm not sure if that's a hangover from the Euros, where he also, again, in the final, he didn't seem that interested in making substitutes. I can't remember which pundit said it, but someone said in the week that England have the best bench or something like that in international football. It's quite interesting that Southgate obviously doesn't see it that way or doesn't trust his players on the bench enough to play them, especially in the qualifier. I'm not saying that had anything to do with Poland scoring in the 92nd minute, because at the end of the day, the players on the pitch should be good enough to stop that from happening. But at the end of the day, we'll take a point. We're pretty much qualified anyway, so no worries.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's kind of just one of those things. Like the thing is with like qualifiers and all that kind of stuff, like realistically, if you're successful or whatever, no one really cares that much about them because you should get through. It only becomes really dramatic when you're struggling, Otherwise, it's kind of a case of, like you said, or is there an England game on? Oh, there is. I guess I should catch it or whatever. Chrissy, what did you make of the game? What did you think of the superlative former Arsenal goalkeeper Wojciech Szczesny?
Well, I must admit, I only watched the 5-minute highlight video on YouTube because I was busy Wednesday. I went round to a friend's house and just had a gaming night. But yeah, I mean, it's just typical Wojciech Szczesny, isn't it? Like just probably just being too casual for his own good again. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a good strike by Harry Kane, and like fair play to him. Obviously, I think he's now moved up to 5th in the overall. He's overtaken Michael Owen, is now 5th, and it's not the case of if he's going to break Wayne Rooney's record. I think it's when he's going to break Wayne Rooney's record, if I can say Wayne Rooney, that is. But I can imagine him doing it. Maybe even Qatar. Maybe he might do it Qatar at World Cup. Hopefully in the final if we get there.
Oh, Chrissy.
Yeah, but yeah, I think Southgate. I mean, even I'm happy that we've taken a point away against Poland, because on paper that is probably the toughest game in the group. Just the fact that Poland have a world-class striker in Lewandowski, and it showed at the end of the game where obviously Lewandowski showed his class to manage to dink the ball into the box for I can't pronounce the other guy's name. Some Polish guy beginning with S scored a goal.
You'd be a dynamite commentator, Chris.
Yeah. Got the Fiorentina guy beginning with V. Now the Polish guy beginning with S.
Or a stadium announcer, I think. Number 25, player beginning with S. But no, I think it's weird with international football. I very much have a love-hate relationship with it. Like, I'm not a fan of international breaks at all, just because I just don't really care for them that much. Obviously, like everyone else, enjoy international football in the big tournaments. Whether or not you qualify for them is another question. The thing that bugs me about international football, and hopefully they're kind of going away from this, is when you have those ones for like friendlies for no reason. We're going to have like a 2-week break and play like 3 friendlies. It's like, why? Why? And I know there have been like reforms proposed by Arsene Wenger about possibly having the World Cup every 2 years, which again, not for me, not for me. But I do think there needs to be a little bit of reform about international football, because certainly at times like this, it kind of feels a bit like unnecessary. I mean, I understand the qualifying parts of it, but like I said, friendlies and stuff like that. And just, I have a thing with Gareth Southgate as well. I'm still not to this, even though he's had success with England. He got to a semi-final, got to a final. It's just a case of, I feel like I you know what I sound like? I sound like, and I do catch myself with this a lot, I sound like those people that don't like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer that are Man United fans.
I was going to say that. You do.
I do, because people will say like, oh, he gets lucky, and you go, well, he gets lucky a lot. But I do think it's kind of a little bit different with international football, because he does get lucky. He's had 2 tournaments where he's had tremendous draws, absolutely tremendous draws, and he's got arguably the best England squad in a really long time. And I think my biggest thing with him is he just tries to, I feel like he tries to overcomplicate tactics, or tries to be like really tactically astute, or I'm really worrying about what the other team's doing. And it's kind of a case of like, like in the Euros when we played, was it Czech Republic as our first game? And it was a case of like, oh yeah, I'm going to play like the right back at left back and do all that kind of stuff. And it's like, we've got the players that we shouldn't have to worry about the opposition. If you put like, the best players on, don't worry about their strike or whatever. You've got this bench full of talent. And like you said, Barnes, you don't make subs to like the 70th minute or 75th minute. When you've got players on there, just one of them could change a game, let alone however many you can bring on. I just find it very bizarre, but I guess you can't argue with the results he's got on paper. It's just a case of, you feel like if we don't win something, you talk about the golden generation missing out. It does kind of feel like that, doesn't it? Once again, if we don't do something, but who knows? It's hope for another year. We'll end up on the Brazil players being banned. This is a really fascinating story. So for those not aware, there was this issue where players from the Premier League or playing in England weren't allowed to fly out to South America, because the countries in South America were on the red list.
Yeah.
And so the Premier League said, and like the English government basically said, you can't fly out. The national teams were not happy about this and said, well, it doesn't matter. You got to fly out. You got to play for your country. Some players did, like those Argentinian players flew out to Brazil. The match kicked off, and then people ran on the pitch and tried to arrest them or detain them, which I saw you covered in the other pod, so we won't go into that one. But obviously, some players stayed at home because they were like, well, I can't go. So I can't go because the country I live in, play in, is saying I can't go, and the league I play in saying I can't go. Well, countries like Brazil then wrote to FIFA and requested that they invoke what is called the 5-day rule or something like that, whereby if you don't show up for international duty when called up or whatever, you can be banned for 5 days or banned for whatever it may be. So people like, for instance, Fred, who didn't go on international duty, can't play for Manchester United either. And it's a bit of a weird situation, Tang, because you kind of feel like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer pointed that out earlier today. It's kind of lose-lose, because either way, the player doesn't play. The player doesn't play if he followed the rules, which seems bizarre. I mean, what do you think about it all?
It's a bit mad, isn't it? Because I think Klopp said in an interview today that he had no idea if his Brazilian players were going to be able to play tomorrow, which is crazy. Like, it's the day before a game and you don't know if your players are going to be able to play, which I just find is mad. And I think this 5-day rule or whatever it is, I think it extends to Tuesday, Wednesday, which I think is Champions League games next week, isn't it? So it affects, all of that. And then there's also, does this mean this is going to happen every single international break?
That's what I was saying earlier today. It's a case of like, how many are there left? There might be a couple left, I think, this year.
Yeah,
and that could happen. And that could happen again. I mean, it's weird. It's crazy.
I just can't. I feel this is, again, I think we might have discussed this on a previous pod about sort of international football and how it's all going to play into the politics of COVID and stuff. And I think we all agreed this is kind of only the start. And now we're seeing this completely weird and unprecedented situation, and it might become more precedented as time goes on.
I just feel, look, there were some Man United fans that were like, oh, Fred isn't playing great. Fred's terrible, all that kind of stuff. Or he can play tomorrow. Turns out he's not Brazilian. It all makes sense after all that kind of stuff, which is funny, ha. But at the end of the day, you do feel sorry for people like him because he followed the rules. He wanted to play for his country. He couldn't. So he didn't. He wants to play for his club and now he can't. And for him, it would be a case of like, oh, what do I do? Like, I followed the rules. I'm being punished for following the rules of the country that I live in. Like, that to me seems really, really strange and, really unfortunate for maybe, at the end of the day, it's Fred. But it's just, what do you think, Barnes? It feels like it's sort of bureaucracy getting in the way of football. These two sort of, Premier League or England squabbling with these South American countries. But it's meant to be over football. Then at the end of the day, no one's playing football. It just seems very bizarre.
It is bizarre, and I agree with Tang. It's very much the start of a club versus country. I know obviously the reasons are COVID, but I think this is just the start of where we'll see a lot of conflicts between, especially as the football schedule maybe changes. Like we're seeing, the Qatar World Cup's going to be over winter, so that's going to affect domestic schedules and that kind of thing. I can see more clashes in the future. I do think it's a bit of, in the context of the Man United Newcastle game. I mean, Ollie doesn't have to play Fred, but another Brazilian player, Joel Linton, Steve Bruce still has to play him. It's not fair, is it? No. I mean, but I don't know. At the end of the day, like you said, Owen, it is mostly bureaucracy, and in particular, in this case, the Brazilian FA being a bit bitter and twisted about, you didn't want to release our players, you gave us resistance, therefore we're not going to let your players play. But yeah, like you said, what's going to happen next time or the time after that? COVID's not going to go anywhere, so I can only see this escalating unless I could also see a last minute, we have come to an arrangement and the players are suddenly lining up on the pitch, because I imagine all the players are back in England and training anyway. So
Fred never left,
and I think. I think Rafa said that Richarlison apparently might be playing because the Brazilian FA gave them like special dispensation.
Yeah, because he went to the Olympics. He went to the Olympics when he kind of didn't have to or something like that. They're like, wow, you did win this. Like, you have to start at the Olympics, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, what? And then that's when then you realize it's just pettiness. That's what it is. It's just pettiness. And it's weird though, because like, look, when it comes to the pandemic or whatever, every country is different, and whatever country you live in or work in, unfortunately, whether you agree with it or not, you have to kind of adhere to where you live, don't you? That's just the case. There have been cases over the last 18 months or so that someone was like, yeah, I live in, I don't know, the United States, or I work in the United States and I haven't been able to go home since, basically, because I'm stuck here, because I can't travel back home, all that kind of stuff. And obviously people would want that, but where they live and where they work, it's stuck, isn't it? It's just very, very weird. Just like I said, very weird and very, I don't know. I just, like you said, and you do get the impression that it might be the case of like, at 2:00 tomorrow, Fred's playing. Why? We figured it out. Don't worry. Or they just name him and be like, what are you going to do? You give Newcastle the game because Fred play, I mean, Christy, what do you make of it?
Oh, it's just another typical FIFA farce, really, isn't it? I mean, I can understand why Klopp's probably the most furious out of all the managers, because obviously Liverpool are losing the most players, and arguably, I mean, all right, they've got Jota to come in for Firmino, and obviously with Fabinho centre midfield, obviously they can cover that. But the big one is obviously losing Alisson in goal, because does Klopp go for young Kelleher, which, to be fair, Kelleher has done well for Liverpool.
Did well last year, didn't he?
Gun and goal. Or do they go for the Spanish clown that is Adrian, that, cost them that Champions League tie against Atletico Madrid a few seasons back and just put on an absolute comedy show in that Aston Villa game last season when they lost 7-2. And don't get me wrong, like, obviously Leeds will lose their talisman in Rafinha as well, who's been tremendous for them. But at least in Leeds' case, they can just switch him out for Dan James, who also they signed deadline day in that. But it's just really stupid how it's come to this. And obviously it hasn't helped with the fact that obviously with this, in terms of like the South American qualifying, they're trying to catch up on games that they've added an extra fixture to the South American. So I think instead of playing 2 games like they normally would, they'd play 3 games. So even if the Premier League players went, they'd be playing the Thursday night, and if they're playing on the Saturday, there's no chance they're going to be playing on the Saturday because they'll be tired through just jet lag and that. So they really need to come to some sort of agreement where they say, all right, for the meantime, they either can't travel or at the end of the day, it's not just the Premier League they got to come to an agreement with. It's the UK government as well that they need to come to an agreement with as well. Just say, look, can you make footballers exempt in that, and maybe sort of say, like, all right, we'll release Premier League players for 2 out of the 3 games, but we want to have them back, in time for the weekend rather than, letting them play all 3 and not coming back. Because obviously, in fairness to Spurs and Aston Villa, in terms of the 4 Argentinian players, obviously they did come to an amicable agreement with the Argentinian FA to let those players go out in that. But then obviously the whole farce with them, with the whole Brazil thing and that. Obviously, I think these Argentinian players are now they now have to go to Croatia, quarantine there for a bit, to then be allowed to come back into the UK, so they don't have to quarantine. It's all just. It's clear as mud, as you'd say. It's absolutely clear as mud. You
get the impression as well, like with that thing as well, like you said, like again, this isn't like the Premier League's fault, like you were saying just then. It's like it's something that they need to Brazil or the Brazilian Football Federation, whatever it needs to be, needs to figure out with the UK government. It's not the Premier League players, and certainly isn't. The Premier League rather's fault, and it's certainly not the players' fault that they happen to play in England or they happen to play in the Premier League. So I just think when it comes to that, like, it just seems very petty. But I think you're all right in the sense that it feels like it's only going to be the beginning of it. And if put it this way, if the Premier League clubs just basically, go to them and say, up yours, we're not going to change or whatever, screw you sort of thing, you wouldn't put it past Brazil going to FIFA like, okay, we're going to double down on this. We're going to make sure they can't play. We're going to file some kind of injunction or whatever. Just at the end of the day, you would look at it and say with these players, well, they can't travel because the country they're in is, that's their law, Yeah. It's very, very odd. Nevertheless, we've been going for nearly an hour now, so it's been good to get back in the seat, good to get opinions once again. How have you guys found it? We don't normally do this. We don't normally end with like a how did you find it? A little breakdown. How did you find it, Tang?
Oh, it's lovely to have you back, Owen.
No, I wasn't saying you praise me. I was talking more about the podcast in general. But thanks.
Oh no! It's nice to have you back, and it's nice to talk football with the boys on a Friday evening, ready for some fantastic Premier League games this weekend, and also the F1.
Yeah, what's the race this weekend?
Monza,
Italy.
Thank you. I was going to pretend I knew what Monza was.
Apologies.
No, it's interesting, the F1 at the moment, isn't it? Very interesting. With Verstappen had that big lead for a while, narrowed down. I'll be honest, like it feels bad to say it because he's like, representing the UK. I'm just not the biggest Lewis Hamilton fan. You've probably seen that in the group chat. It's come across. I've not been happy by it.
It's like supporting Man City. It's like supporting the richest team and the best car.
Well, yeah, and also
not much glory in it.
A little bit, suddenly one year doesn't have the best car, starts not winning races. Suddenly the toys get thrown out of the pram and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, okay. Whiner. Anyway, guys, as always. And exactly. This is where we merged. And I changed the background into, we play some Formula One music. But yes, thank you very much for joining us today, as always. If you're watching on YouTube, if you can see us, if you can see this, then I'm sorry. But if you can see this, smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, be sure to give us a follow, a review, a rating, whatever it may be. Help us out, please. Yeah, help us out. Give us a hand. Give us a little boost up so we can rise those rankings. But we'll speak to you again very soon. You can now say wave and goodbye. Tang, which I know you like to do. Wave and goodbye. We'll speak again soon.